technical difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
We will have that.
Yeah.
All righty. So we're back here live with the here at Albemarle Park doing the fatherhood discussion, and we have brothers here here at Albemarle Park doing a live discussion about fatherhood. Brother John, can you give us your definition of what a father is? We'll pick up from there.
So we'll go back again to, like I said, the original, one of the original meanings of the word father was farmer. And as a farmer, we know he plants a seed and develops a crop, and he has to nourish that crop and protect it from the weeds and all those things. The same thing it is, I believe, with a father. When he plants a seed, he loves that child, because that child is an extension of his. And I see his role as developing that child, watching over that child, keeping harm away from that child, nourishing that child, and setting it on the path to adulthood. And my father was that type of man. Strict, firm man, but he knew you were loved. And he was the most influential man in my life. I grew up watching, admiring my father, and I learned from him. And that by me, I reflect back into my memory, and I can recall that my father, from the old school, was one of those men who worked hard and provided the best that he could for his children.
And we have Brother James Way here. What would you say your definition of a father is?
For me, like I said, I grew up out west. I grew up in a two-parented household, which I grew up with my dad, but I also had, when my dad wasn't around, I had father-like figures. I had two older brothers that's a lot older than me. One of them, like I said, which is my brother Gerald, he's here on the panel today. So I always had a positive male influence in my life to keep me on the straight and narrow, and that was really like the bigger influence in my life was them being able to keep me on the straight path, not giving me what I wanted, but always giving me what I needed. Whether it had to come in the form of, you know what I'm saying, a high five or a hug, or they had to slap me in the head to keep me straight, you know. But it's from my dad to my older brothers, none of them was afraid to, you know, give me what I needed. And along with that, back in those days, it was even when you didn't have your biological father wasn't around, you had a lot of good men in this community that was father-like figures to a lot more kids than just their own. So a lot of it is being a biological father, but a lot more of it is being a father-like figure, because there's a lot of kids that didn't have a father or for various reasons. So there's a lot of things that goes into that.
All right. And we got our young brother here. Brother, how would you bring yourself on?
Pastor Tevin Gibson.
Yes, sir.
So when I pay attention to as the elder said, father means a farmer. One of the things that I happen to understand about a father in itself, primarily, is a source. It's the ultimate source. And when we pay attention to a father, we understand that every time a father begins to breathe life into others, whether it's life, whether it's wisdom, whether it's in a form of correction, whether it's in a form of providing, ultimately that's the source. So when we pay attention to a father, whether he's planting a seed, whatever he's doing, it's the source. So for me, growing up without actually having a father inside my home, I had to learn quickly through the Word of God, through the Scriptures, what a father actually would give me. He gave me intellect. He gave me wisdom. He provided for me. He set me and gave me life. That's a source. So we can get a lot of misconceptions about what certain things are, but when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, it's all backs down to a source. And just to kind of give a little bit more insight onto it, just for myself, when I was out in the world doing things I shouldn't have been doing, I had to have a source to look to be able to change my life. And as that life began to change through that source, I was able to step on my feet and do the things that I was supposed to do and articulate the way that that source taught me to do. So yeah, father is more or less a source as opposed to all the different definitions. The biggest thing is primarily job is to bring forth things, source.
And Brother Gerald, what would your definition of a father be?
I grew up in a home without my biological father, but I did have a father figure, a man in my life. For me, a father is respect, a father is love, a father is a man, a father is a provider. A father is a man that you should look up to and want to be like. A father is what you need. A father is necessary. A father is a man that makes sure that you don't hurt for anything. A father wants you to be the best that you can be. A father is there for your football, basketball games. A father is there to fix your bike. A father is the guy that just does the ultimate things for you. A father is your first hero. He's the man in your life that makes you want to be the man that you ultimately end up growing up to be. A father is so many things, so many hats they wear. A father is humble. A father is relaxed. A father makes sure that everything is going to be all right. Because he's a man and he understands what it is that a man does in the life of his child, wife, family, etc. Because that's what he exemplifies as not only a person, but as a man.
Great. And moving further, can anyone distinguish between the difference between a father and a dad? Is there a difference?
I'd have to say so. Being the youngest out of all the guys that's sitting here with me, I would beckon that the difference between a father and a dad is one that's just kind of in and out your life. He's not a person that's there for you. He's not a source, as I spoke earlier. A dad is just the person that's got the name, he's got the title. A lot of people talk about deadbeat dads and things like that. That's because he's not doing his job. He's not being a source. If he was being a source, then we wouldn't have the problems that we have. You know, a dad is, man, he wants to be out. He wants to kind of just do his own thing. A father is going to stand by your side. As this brother sitting next to me was saying, a father is going to fix that bike for you. So a dad, he's not really going to be there for you. But a father will. He's always going to, stand by your side and make sure everything's going to float the way that they should be. That's more or less a dad as opposed to a father.
Okay. And what would y'all say growing up and in this city is the big difference between, in your experience, fatherhood? What would you say is the big difference between a father and a dad growing up for you, Brother John?
Well, I like I said, I reflect back on my dad, or my father and my dad, and he was a man that I knew the circumstances that were going on in York, Pennsylvania, made it very difficult for him to be the type of man or father that he wanted to be. There was a lot of opposition placed, or a lot of obstacles put in his path. And I could always see a concerned look on his face, and was not until I became an adult myself that I could see the hardships that my father went through trying to be the man that he did, because the system worked against him. And in spite of that, he never lost hope, and he always strived to do the best that he could. But for some reason, there was always a concern I could see in his face that he was troubled because of the environment that he was placed in. It was very difficult for the African American male here in Europe, especially, to achieve some of their goals because of the opposition. And now that I learned, it was just basic racism that was going on. My father wanted to buy the home that we lived in, but the landlord would not even sell it to him. And so those are the kind of things that broke his spirit. So I like I said, I reflect on my childhood, and I look at my father, and now I can understand some of the things that he went through that made it difficult for him to grow to his fullest potential. But he did the best he could with what he had. And he loved and respected my mother. My mother told me, she said that she did not mind having children. There were 9 of us. And she said she told me that she did not mind having children by my father, because when she became pregnant, my father, she said, took care of everything. He cooked, he cleaned, he waited on her hand and foot. So that was a lesson that I learned from my parents. But it was a big feather in the hat for my father, being a man.
Great. Growing up for you, Brother James, what was the difference for you with fatherhood?
For me, like I said, being younger, I actually went to school with some of Brother John's kids. So, you know, being a parent and everything now, the difference that I see now is, like I said, when we were young, and like I said, for my dad, he was around, you know, he gave us what we needed as far as being the rights and the wrongs, but it was more to being a father and more to fatherhood when we left home and we got out there in those streets. Back in the days when we were young, you know, I was born in the 70s, so we was 80s babies. Back in those days, when the fathers in York City seen you doing wrong, they didn't mind snatching you up and correcting you. Back in those days, everybody knew everybody anyway, so they would snatch you up. By the time you got home, your parents already knew what was going on. The difference between back in our day when we was young and right now is the dads, they'll see these kids do something wrong and walk by it because it's not their problem, it's not my child. Versus back in the day when anybody's father would collar you up. You didn't have no problem putting them hands on you if need be if you got out of pocket. They didn't have a problem with that, and your parents didn't have a problem with that. Because back in those days, nobody wanted to go to their child's funeral or to their trial. So if you seen their kids doing something wrong, please stop them. And that's a lost art here in Europe. Some parents are arguing with you over correcting their kids before they say thank you. And that is a major problem here. Like I said, being a school district employee, I give out hugs and high fives to hundreds of kids, realizing that may be the only adult male interaction that they have. Some of them kids, I don't even know their names, but they come to Mr. Wade every day for that hug or that high five or that good word. You know, and that was something that I had to learn. And I did learn, like I said, I see my brother do it all the time. I see both of my older brothers do it. And I seen my dad and some of my football coaches, the Coach Ross, Coach Simmons, Coach Greens, and those guys, I seen them give back to hundreds of kids, hundreds of young boys, not just their own kids. So now in my adult life, I think it's only right that I give it back and pass down what was passed to me because it was given to me for free. So you know, we grew up in the era, like I said, love don't cost a thing. Whether it's your child or somebody else's, if you see them struggling, correct it. You know what I'm saying? Reach out to that kid because you may be the lifeline between life and death for that kid. You never know what's going on. So that, for me, that's the biggest difference between, you know, fatherhood and being a dad. It's kind of like having a job. When you part-time, it's kind of like being a dad. You there some of the time. Fathers clock in and they don't clock out. You're on your job 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It's full-time because you can't raise your kids part-time. Part of the time around here, will get your kids in jail, or you be, you know what I'm saying, you'll be in that funeral procession taking your kid to the graveyard.